The flight from Denver to New York began like any other. The aircraft cruised smoothly at 30,000 feet, with a low hum of engines and the occasional clink of glasses and trays. Passengers chatted quietly, some dozed, others scrolled through their phones or read magazines. In row 17, Lena, a reserved 17-year-old girl, sat alone by the window. Her headphones played soft piano music as she sketched in her notebook, lost in her own world. She avoided eye contact, preferring to stay unnoticed, just another face in the crowd. Flight attendants moved down the aisles with carts, offering drinks and snacks. Everything felt routine, safe. Until it didn't. Without warning, the cabin lights flickered. A strange mechanical whine echoed, rising above the hum, and then, an unnatural silence. The engines cut out. A stillness, so absolute and sudden, filled the cabin. Then came the sound of gasps, startled cries. Oxygen masks fell from the overhead compartments, dangling like lifelines. Panic erupted as passengers reached for them, shouting questions, looking around for guidance. Lena pulled her headphones off, frozen. Her eyes widened as she looked up at the masks, then toward the front of the plane. The intercom crackled, then nothing. No voice. No instruction. The cockpit door remained closed, unmoving. No one came out. In that moment, suspended in a quiet terror of 30,000 feet with no engine sound and no guidance, the plane was not just losing altitude, it was losing hope. And yet, Lena sat still, listening to a silence no one else understood. The silence inside the powerless aircraft was louder than any scream. As the plane glided eerily through the sky, cries and frantic voices filled the cabin. A baby wailed somewhere near the back. A woman sobbed into her phone, whispering goodbyes. An elderly man clutched his chest, his breathing shallow and fast. Fear had taken over. People searched the faces of flight attendants, but they looked just as lost. In row 17, Lena sat motionless. Her fingers gripped the edge of her seat, but her eyes were distant, focused, remembering. The chaos around her blurred into the background. She wasn't panicking. She was remembering the simulator. The flashing lights. Her father's calm voice guiding her through emergencies on a screen. Landing gear, throttle control, reading instruments, things he taught her not for real life, but as a way to share his passion for flying. She had always thought it was just a game, a bonding ritual. Now, it was the only clarity she had. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but adrenaline. She looked toward the cockpit door. Still shut. No one had come out. No announcement. She could feel the plane slowly descending, uncontrolled and unguided. She turned to the window, saw the thick clouds below, and then back to the aisle, filled with panicked strangers. She whispered under her breath, barely audible, "I know what to do." In a moment when everyone felt powerless, a quiet determination began to rise in her chest, one that had been waiting, quietly, for this very moment. Lena stood up. Her knees were shaking, but her voice, though soft, carried a quiet certainty. "I need to get to the cockpit," she said. No one heard her at first over the panic. But a mother nearby, holding a crying child, looked up. She locked eyes with Lena and saw something rare, calm. Not fear. Not confusion. Just resolve. "I think she knows something," the mother said aloud. Others turned. A flight attendant stepped in front of Lena, flustered and desperate. "Please, miss, stay seated." But before she could argue further, a man near the emergency exit, tall, broad-shouldered, with a military tattoo on his forearm, stood up. "She's not panicking like the rest of us. Let her through." Lena nodded, moved past the flight attendant, and walked the narrow aisle, her footsteps firm despite the trembling floor. When she reached the cockpit door, a flight attendant unlocked it, her hands shaking. Inside, the sight hit Lena like a punch to the chest. Both pilots slumped over, oxygen masks dangling uselessly. No motion. No response. For a second, Lena hesitated. Then she stepped into the co-pilot's seat. The controls felt strangely familiar, like muscle memory pulling her hands into place. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, "If you're ever in a jam, fly the plane, not your fear." She looked at the dead instruments, the horizon ahead, the endless sky beyond. With a breath deeper than any she had taken before, she reached for the yoke. This was no longer a drill. Lena sat in the cockpit, her hands trembling on the yoke. The hum of emergency systems was faint, and the main instruments flickered dimly from backup power. The horizon tilted slightly as the plane lost altitude. She reached for the radio, heart pounding. Her voice cracked but held steady, "Mayday, Mayday, this is Flight 308. Both pilots are unresponsive. Requesting emergency landing assistance." A brief silence, then static, then a calm voice, "Flight 308, identify yourself." "Who is speaking?" Lena swallowed. "My name is Lena Matthews. I'm a passenger. But I've trained in simulators with my father. Please help me bring this plane down." In the cabin, passengers were glued to the overhead screen, where a grainy cockpit feed showed Lena's pale but focused face. Some gasped. Others whispered. "She's just a kid," someone said. But the ex-military man from earlier stood, placing a hand on his heart. "She's our only hope." The air inside the plane grew denser as the descent steepened. Lena followed ground control's instructions, adjusting altitude and speed. Every movement felt both terrifying and strangely instinctive. Outside the windshield, thick clouds gave way to land, patches of green fields, roads, and a small rural airstrip straight ahead. In the cabin, a man bowed his head in prayer. A child clutched her teddy bear tighter. Tears flowed silently down faces once frozen in panic. Lena tightened her grip. "We're going to land," she said quietly, not just to herself, but to everyone who had put their trust in her. The wheels hit the earth hard, bouncing once, then again. A screech of metal. Gasps. But then, miraculously, the aircraft steadied. Dust and grass kicked up around them as the plane skidded across the edge of a rural emergency runway, finally grinding to a shuddering halt. For a second, there was only silence. Then the cabin erupted, sobs, laughter, applause, and the unmistakable sound of relief. Lena sat frozen in the cockpit, her hands still on the yoke, breathing shallow and fast. A flight attendant rushed in and gently touched her shoulder. "You did it. We're down." One by one, passengers disembarked, many looking back with tears in their eyes. Some whispered prayers. Others simply stared at the girl who had saved their lives. Emergency responders helped the unconscious pilots. News cameras had already arrived, flashing lights and swarming around the runway. Lena stepped out last, sketchbook still tucked under her arm, face pale with exhaustion. Reporters surrounded her, shouting questions. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She simply looked up at the sky, blinking against the light, her thoughts somewhere far beyond the chaos. A few days later, she stood quietly at her father's grave, a single daisy in hand. She knelt, brushing away dust from the name engraved in stone. "We did it, Dad," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her story would circle the globe, not just about a girl who flew a plane, but about someone who rose to the moment with grace, courage, and love. The quiet girl from row 17 had become a symbol of hope.